No one in the audience expected much from the shy young Filipino standing on the AGT stage. His clothes were simple, his hands trembled around the microphone, and even Simon glanced down at his notes in mild disinterest. But then the music started, the unmistakable opening of an Elvis classic, and something unimaginable happened. The timid young man suddenly transformed. His voice didn't just sound like Elvis, it felt like him. Within seconds, the room went silent. People stopped breathing. And for the first time in years, Simon Cowell leaned forward with genuine disbelief in his eyes. Elias had never been the kind of man who drew attention. He grew up in a small town in the Philippines where dreams were quiet and responsibilities were loud. From the age of 15, he worked first fixing fishing nets with his father, then later packing cans in a small food factory to help his family survive. Life never gave him much, but it gave him a voice he rarely shared outside the walls of his home. He was raised by a single mother, a woman who held the world together with faith, prayer, and a smile that somehow survived every hardship. Music was her escape, and Elvis was her heartbeat. She would sway around their tiny living room, humming "Love Me Tender," holding a wooden spoon like a microphone, her son giggling as he copied her moves. She told him, "Anok, God gives special gifts only to those strong enough to carry them." Elias never believed she meant him. As years passed, the walls of their home aged, but their bond never did. After long shifts at the factory, he would sit beside his mother, playing old Elvis songs from a small speaker. She would close her eyes, soaking in every note as if music could heal what medicine couldn't. And when she fell ill, when the doctor whispered heart failure as if it were a simple word instead of a sentence, Elias' world cracked in silence. He worked double shifts, then triple. He skipped meals. He sold his guitar, the only gift his father ever left him. Still, the bills stacked higher than his strength. One night, as he sat on the hospital bench, staring at an invoice he couldn't pay, a nurse approached him gently and said, "You have a gift. I heard you singing to her. Don't let desperation steal it." She handed him a flyer. America's Got Talent auditions, happening in Los Angeles. The idea felt absurd. Elias wasn't a superstar. He wasn't even confident. But then he thought of his mother lying in a hospital bed, fighting for her life after spending hers fighting for his. So he borrowed money, bought the cheapest plane ticket he could find, and arrived in America with one backpack, 2 shirts, and a prayer. Backstage at a he stood tightly gripping the microphone, surrounded by performers dressed in glitter, cheering loudly, embracing cameras. He felt like a shadow among stars. He didn't have a stylist, choreography, or even a plan, only a voice shaped by love and sacrifice. When the assistant called, "Elias, you're next," his knees trembled. He replayed every memory of his mother, her laughter, her tears, her belief in him, even when he didn't believe in himself. His heart whispered, "Do it for her. Even if you fail." As he stepped onto the vast stage, staring into the blinding lights and judging eyes, he didn't know if he would win. He wasn't even sure he would survive the nerves. But what he did know, perhaps for the first time, was that this moment wasn't about talent, it was about love. The lights on the AGT stage were bright enough to make anyone forget how to breathe. Elias stood in the center, the cord of the microphone wrapped nervously around his fingers. The judges looked at him with polite curiosity, the kind reserved for thousands who had come before him. Heidi gave a friendly smile. Sophia clapped softly. Howie leaned forward with interest. But Simon simply watched with a neutral expression, already preparing for the possibility of another forgettable performance. "What's your name?" Howie asked Elias. He replied in a soft voice, barely louder than a whisper. "And why are you here today?" Heidi continued. Elias swallowed hard. His throat tightened. I'm here to sing. For my mother." There was a brief silence. Not dramatic, just quiet. The kind of moment that dissolves quickly, if not filled with something extraordinary. The judges nodded, and Simon lifted his eyebrow just slightly, signaling the music technician. The track began. The first 3 piano notes echoed through the room. The unmistakable opening of Can't Help Falling in Love. A classic. A daring choice. and one that instantly raised expectations. A few audience members murmured. A man in the back whispered, "Elvis, really?" Someone else added, "This could go really bad." Even the judges shared cautious glances. Nobody expected this shy, trembling Filipino to pull off a song so iconic, a voice so beloved, so recognizable. Then Elias sang. The first line was soft, gentle, but pure, a tone full of warmth, nostalgia, and aching tenderness. The room stilled. By the second line, whispers stopped completely. Heads lifted, eyes widened, and Simon Cowell, the man whose expression rarely changed, leaned forward. Elias didn't imitate Elvis, he honored him. The depth, the vibrato, the control, but also the vulnerability. Every note carried a story. Every breath carried love, fear, and years of sacrifice. His voice wasn't just beautiful. It was honest. The audience started reacting like a wave. A couple stood up. A teenager wiped her eyes. A man in the front clutched his chest as if the song pulled memories from somewhere deep inside. One by one, more and more people rose from their seats, drawn to the raw emotion rather than the performance. When Elias reached the chorus, something shifted. The stadium background lights lifted in perfect sync, forming a gold glow around him. He didn't notice the production magic. He didn't notice the cameras, or the thousands of eyes. He was singing for one person, his mother. Even judges known for composure cracked. Sophia softly whispered, "Oh my God." Heidi pressed her fingers to her lips. Howie blinked rapidly, absorbing every note. But Simon was the shock. His eyes locked on Elias. He sat back, then forward again, trying to make sense of what he was hearing. It wasn't just talent, it was soul. It was desperation wrapped in love. It was a son begging the world for one more tomorrow with his mother. By the time Elias reached the final line of the chorus, the audience was already cheering, clapping, raising their hands, but he powered through. Still pouring everything inside him into the lyrics, no one expected a miracle that night. Yet everyone in the room was witnessing one. Halfway through the performance, the energy in the theater transformed from admiration to something deeper, something sacred. The cheers faded into a stillness so intense that even the cameras stopped panning, as if afraid to break the moment. Elias held the microphone with both hands now, his knuckles white, his eyes glistening under the stage lights. He continued singing, but the words weren't simply lyrics anymore, they were memories. As he reached the second verse, his mind suddenly drifted back to nights in the hospital, sitting beside his mother as she slept. He would rest his head on the edge of her bed, whispering Elvis songs softly so she wouldn't feel alone. The image played in his mind so vividly that for a brief second, he forgot he was on the biggest stage in the world. Out in the crowd, near the middle rows, a woman held up a poster, a large black and white photograph of Elvis, smiling in his iconic white jumpsuit. She wasn't waving it proudly like a fan, she held it close to her heart, as if protecting it. Her eyes were closed, and tears streamed down her face. She wasn't just listening, she was remembering someone too. That was the moment Elias broke. His voice cracked, not out of weakness, but out of love. A single tear escaped down his cheek. He tried to push forward, but the depth of the emotion overwhelmed him. He stepped back, his chest trembling as he fought to breathe. The music continued, waiting for him, urging him gently forward, but he froze. The audience didn't judge. They didn't sigh. They didn't shift impatiently in their seats. They waited. The silence in the arena wasn't empty, it was full. Full of understanding. Full of grief. Full of hearts that recognized the pain of loving someone you might lose. Elias lifted his eyes toward the blurry sea of faces, trying desperately to regain control. The woman with the Elvis poster opened her eyes at that exact moment. She placed a hand over her heart and nodded slowly, knowingly, as if telling him, "I understand. Keep going." That small gesture shattered the floodgates inside him. He took one step forward, then whispered, barely audible, "This is for you, Mama." He closed his eyes and began again. But this time his voice wasn't flawless. It shook, it wavered. But it was real. Every note carried a lifetime of sacrifice. Every breath carried the fear of losing the only person who ever told him he was special. The audience cried openly. Even grown men with tough faces wiped their eyes discreetly. Howie leaned back in his chair, looking like he was hit in the chest with a memory of his own. Heidi held her heart with both hands, whispering the words along with him. But Simon didn't move. He stared with an intensity that almost looked painful, not just listening, but feeling. His expression wasn't the critic anymore. It was the father, the son, the human being, as the final line of the verse echoed through the theater. Ilya's voice floated into a haunting whisper, fragile but full of love. He wasn't just singing for the world to hear, he was singing so his mother, wherever she was at that moment, would know her son never stopped fighting. When the last whisper of Elias' voice faded, there wasn't a single sound in the entire arena. No applause. No movement. Just stunned, heavy silence. The kind that happens when thousands of hearts are feeling the same emotion at the same time. Then, like a spark igniting dry leaves, the entire audience erupted. People leaped to their feet. Applause thundered like rainfall. Some shouted, some cried, and many simply stood there, hands over their faces, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Gold lights swirled around the stage, amplifying a moment that already felt bigger than life. But Elias didn't celebrate. He stood still, head lowered, clutching the microphone as if afraid to let go. His chest rose and fell sharply, his breath uneven. He didn't see the cameras zooming in. He didn't see the judges exchanging emotional glances. All he could think was, "Mama, please be watching. Please be okay." He bowed his head, expecting criticism, expecting doubt, expecting someone to say he cracked, that he should have been stronger. But as he lifted his eyes, he saw something he never imagined. Simon Cowell was standing. The judge who rarely stood. The judge who never stood unless something was extraordinary. His expression wasn't sharp, wasn't analytical, it was human. His face was soft, unreadable, but his eyes told the truth. He had been moved. Simon didn't return to the judge's table. Instead, he walked toward Elias, step by step, through the falling lights and roaring applause. The closer he got, the quieter the room became, as if everyone sensed something unforgettable was about to happen. Simon stopped in front of Elias. He leaned down slightly so that the microphone picked up his words. Clearly, no mother, he said softly, should suffer because her son can't afford to save her. Elias' breath caught. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Tears pushed forward again, flooding his eyes until the stage lights blurred into glowing halos. Simon stepped back, took one deep breath, and slammed his hand down on the golden buzzer. The arena exploded. The music blasted triumph. Confetti shot from cannons, and swirling gold filled the air like stars cascading from the ceiling. The stage became a dream, bright, loud, surreal, but Elias didn't see any of it. The moment the golden buzzer sounded, he dropped to his knees. He cried, not from victory, not from pride, but from relief. A relief so deep it shook through his body. For the first time in months, he didn't feel helpless. Somewhere in the chaos, Simon returned to him and pulled him into a steadying hug. Not the kind of hug for television, but a real one. A hug from someone who understood what desperation felt like. "You're not alone anymore," Simon whispered, barely audible beneath the cheers. Those were the words that broke whatever pieces of fear were still inside him. It wasn't just a performance anymore. It wasn't just applause. It wasn't even the golden buzzer, it was hope, and for Elias, hope was everything. Backstage, away from the roaring applause and falling confetti, the world suddenly fell quiet again. Elias sat on a small black couch, still trembling from the wave of emotion. His hands shook so badly that the stage assistant placed a water bottle beside him instead of in his hands. Sensing he couldn't hold it yet, he stared down at the floor, trying to make sense of everything. Was this real? Was he dreaming? Only one thought pulsed in his mind like a heartbeat. "Mama." Producers rushed around, staff carried cables and cameras. But everyone slowed their steps when they passed Elias. They could feel his sincerity. This wasn't a man overwhelmed by fame or attention. This was a son overwhelmed by love. A soft knock sounded on the wall behind him before Simon Cowell stepped through the doorway. Gone was the powerful judge seated behind a desk. This was just a man. No cameras, no audience. No spotlight standing in front of someone who had touched him in a way he never expected. Elias quickly stood, wiping his eyes, unsure whether he should bow, shake hands, or apologize for crying so much. As sir, Thank you. I don't know how to. Simon lifted a hand gently to stop him. You don't owe me words. He sat beside Elias, not across from him, not above him. Just beside him, like a friend. For years, Simon began quietly, I've heard singers with beautiful voices, but tonight, you didn't sing to win. You sang to survive. And that's what made it unforgettable. Elias lowered his gaze. I just want my mum to live, he whispered, voice trembling. She's everything I have. Simon took a breath, not dramatic, not rehearsed, just human. I know what it's like to worry about a parent, he said, his voice softer than anyone ever hears on television. And I know sometimes the world feels unfair when good people struggle. Elias wiped his cheek with the back of his hand. The golden buzzer. It gives us a chance. Maybe it buys more time. Maybe she'll see me sing again. Simon's eyes shifted a flash of empathy, something personal. Then he quietly added, the golden buzzer is just the start. I want to do more. Elias frowned in confusion. Simon continued, I'll make a personal donation toward your mother's surgery. I want you to focus on her, not bills. For a moment, the world froze. Elias didn't speak. He didn't even breathe. He just stared, stunned, as tears began streaming down his face. Not from pain this time, but from relief, so powerful, it broke him open. He dropped to his knees again. Not out of worship or gratitude, but because his legs simply couldn't hold him. Thank you, he choked out. God bless you. Thank you. Simon placed a hand on his shoulder. Your voice did something tonight. It reminded people what really matters. Elias nodded, but the words didn't fully reach him yet. He was lost in one overpowering thought. His mother was going to live. Behind the cameras, crew members wiped their eyes. One hugged another. It wasn't just Elias who had been changed. Everyone who witnessed the moment had been reminded that kindness still exists, even in a world that often forgets it. Elias walked out of the studio later that night with nothing but his backpack and the same clothes he arrived with, but his life was entirely different. Not because he won a show, but because people chose compassion instead of indifference. Some dreamed to be famous. Some dreamed to be rich. Elias never wanted either. He only wanted to save the person who once danced in their tiny living room, singing Elvis into a wooden spoon, teaching her son that love is the greatest gift we ever get. On this night, the world gave that love back.